enclave in the woods, and put together the stack of books, and you don't really see that. But on the other hand, there's such brightness and glitter and kind of appeal to the paintings that maybe in some way that carries the relational piece a little bit for me. I won't say too much. I just maybe say how a few of the paintings, some thoughts I had. For the one about the books, I think this is a hut made of unread books. Is that right?
Dustbins of literature.
Dustbins of literature. And I found myself going up really close to see if I could read some of the titles. I don't know if some of you might have had that same experience, where I wanted to know what books. I was assuming it was the artist's books, and I wanted to know which books she had on her bookcase and which that she hadn't read, and maybe they were the same ones that I had in my mental list of books that I should have read, but probably would never do. And I also thought about how this books then from here now, I mean, it's a shape. It takes on a totally different form, separate from the fact that it was books, and how so many of the paintings are sort of disembodied in a sense. They're sort of hovering or in space without any grounding, and how that maybe reflects in some way a sense of hoarding as trying to look for calm, or trying to look for connection, or there's something sort of obsessive about wanting those things, more and more and more of them, but the calmness or the grounding is sort of elusive. I think the artist beautifully evokes the sense of artificially created environments where there's an illusion of control and containment. And I think this would sort of be what I envision, well, really what I felt in my kitchen in a little bit of all those objects, and how hard it was for me to decide which ones were valuable to me and which ones had meaning and which ones didn't. The hoarder collects in order to maintain a sense of internal control, but collecting becomes an addiction that demands more and more to produce its calming effect. Just a few thoughts that came up for me as I was thinking about this exhibit. Maybe it'll help some thoughts for you too.
Naomi, do you want to say something?
I had some different and same. Same and different. Just kind of, I came to the gallery actually yesterday, and I was surprised at how much I liked the art. So I don't know what that says, but and thinking about the topic, I didn't think there would be pieces that I'd actually want in my living room, and yet there was something that was appealing about them in a way that I did in some ways want them, some of them, in my living room. And I also, for me, there was like an environmental impact, like the tree, what are the trees called? You know?
Emotional outpouring.
Okay, yeah, for Facebook. And yet here are these trees, and they have all this graffiti on them, or at least halfway up, and then there's these surveillance cameras that are capturing every little piece of them. And it made me think of, from a psychological perspective, of the way objects evoke memory and how we hold on to that. And that just the importance of the one next to it with the covered wagon, the books, and even some of the two pieces that reminded me most of hoarding were this one over here and the one in the back with the yellow. I don't know if she meant it that way, but in the covered wagon, there's like all these things, and they're all collected, and they're all neat. And I don't know if anybody had read the Bee Season, where she goes, and you know, it's just like this whole ritual of grabbing an object and getting an object, and she'd break into people's houses. And here was this woman who had, you know, one life and a family by day, and by day she'd go break into somebody's house, grab an object, like an ashtray or something, and then come home and create these visual, well, actually she didn't go home, she went to a storage unit and created these kaleidoscope of visual. I'm probably ruining the book for everybody now. But it was very moving and a good book. So it made me think of the ways that we as individuals appreciate objects and need objects in our life from the very beginning. And as if we're using objects, developmentally that's a healthy thing, you know, if you think of, and that's what creates attachment, right? So like babies have transitional objects from very early on. There's mom and the human environment, and then there's this non-human environment, and they're always having both in their mind in different ways. And so, you know, as kids grow older, they need objects for reality, for constancy. They have this object, it's them, it's theirs. As adults in their lives, we can't take it away, we can't make it different for them. It has to be theirs to give up. As they get older, you know, and they go into those Oedipal years, you know, they're trying on clothes. And with each stage, they, you know, like the little boy wants to see, tries on dad's clothes to impress mom. The little girls try on the little makeup to seduce dad. And, but then as they get older, they don't need, well, according to Freud, and some of it I think does play out in these Oedipal ways. But they don't need those objects anymore, and so they discard them. And then what happens to them? Do they go in a closet? Where are they? How do we remember them? As you get older, kids play board games. It's a way of measuring things. They need these games. They're playing the games. Into adulthood, you know, we marry, we get cars, or stay single, you get a house, you stereos, all these probably objects that are somewhere in these pictures if you look closely at them. And then you get older and you don't need them anymore, and you downsize. And what do you do with these objects when you're getting a new house and you're so they're all part of life. And then what happens when it goes awry? So you have all these objects, and typically, I think, just from a psychological perspective, I was reading and thinking about, you know, you can get all these different pathologies that would exist. I was like naming just for myself a few of them, like a loss of humanness, or you can become psychotic or delusional around objects, or controlling of objects, or dehumanizing. And I think as our society, sometimes as we struggling to have attachments and relationships, and our lives get busy, we are seeing more and more, or at least we're more aware of some dysfunctions like hoarding or gathering and needing objects to replace or collect, you know, something that's replacing the relationship. It's serving a purpose in somebody's life. And now the objects become the relationship that where a human once was. And although I think in a lot of times we're like, what are all these useful newspapers? You know, what are these useful objects in these people's house? To them they're useful because they represent an object relationship. They replace the important relationships that they don't have, and they become the relationships with the external world. So let me think of what else I can just say. The other, just my reactions to the art, I was also aware of, like I was aware that some have these, to me,